sorry now that I'm a little late. I apologize that you had to wait. It totally slipped my mind. I lost all my sense of time. So buy me that drink and just let me think, and I'll tell you the reasons why. My alibi.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Alibi, the podcast. This is an initiative started by Gagasan Mahasiswa Undang-Undang Sabah. And welcome to another episode of our special podcast series where we invite former members of the judiciary to share their experiences in life, in the legal profession, and as well as the judiciary, starting their time as a young lawyer till they made it to the top. I'm your host, Samuel. Joining today with me is my co-host, Granville, and a very, very special guest, Tan Sri Dato Mohamad Ariff Yusof. A little bit of on Tan Sri's career. Tan Sri has an illustrious career. He graduated with a Bachelor's of Laws and a Master's of Laws from the University of London. And then he started his career in 1974 as a law lecturer in the Law Faculty of University of Malaya before venturing into the legal profession. And he was one of the founding partners of Chiang and Ariff. From 1993 to 1995, he joined then the newly formed Securities Commission of Malaysia and was even its first director of its Market Supervision Department. In 2008, Tan Sri was appointed as Judicial Commissioner of the High Court of Malaya and was later appointed as Judge at High Court of Malaya in 2009. In 2012, he was elevated to the Court of Appeal before retiring and returning to his firm as a consultant in early 2015. As many of you also may know as Tan Sri, he was between July 2018 and July 2020. Tan Sri was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, also known as the Dewan Rakyat in the Malaysian Parliament. Once again, Tan Sri, thank you so much for joining us in this podcast, and we hope you are well and safe today.
Glad to be here with you virtually. Yes.
Thank you so much, Tan Sri.
Thank you so much. So, Tan Sri, how we begin with like all our episodes, we actually would like to take you to the very beginning. And could you tell us about your hometown and where were you born?
All right. I'm as far as Sabah as you can get. I'm from the other side of the country in Kedah. Yeah. More exactly, Sungai Petani. And that's where I was born. Used to be a small town. It's not so small now. It's got a large city now. So that's it for an early introduction to my hometown. Yeah, but I've been living in Selangor for as long as you can remember.
Oh, I see. Could you just share with us just one or two of your most notable of your childhood memories?
My childhood memory. Nothing very interesting. I am one of those regarded as an independence generation. We entered school in 1957, saw the formation of Malaysia, 1963, went through the dark period of the emergency. It was quite bad those days, 69, had first-hand experience with the other unfortunate incident of the nation, the riots of 1969, the suspension of parliament. So we lived through all that, the Indonesian confrontation, and so on. So it's been quite a long journey, I'm now, as you know, 73, going on 74, but I'm quite fortunate, as most of those in my generation are, to see this progression of the country.
Tan Sri, are you the, if you don't mind, Tan Sri, are you the only child in the family?
No. I have a very large family. There are 7 of us.
Wow,
of course, one has passed on, so there are currently 6 of us. All in Kuala Lumpur and its immediate environs, except for one, was chosen to be in Sungai Petani.
Tan Sri, moving on to the next question. Tan Sri, how did you discover the path of the legal profession? Because we heard that you actually wanted to become a doctor
Mm.
instead of a lawyer at the very beginning. So how did that idea of becoming a lawyer, came across your mind?
Of course, for most students, being a doctor would be the pinnacle of a career of sorts. But then I entered the arts stream and toying with the idea of being an economist. Yeah? But in my lower six, or rather the last year of my college, I became interested in the law because I took a subject. I don't think it's being taught nowadays. Maybe in UK it's being taught. It was called British government, or government in short. Got nothing to do with Malaysian government, to do with British government. So my interest in the law stemmed from this course. And an excellent teacher that I had who made me read, or all of us were in the class, we had to read the law reports from the Times of London, and so on and so forth. And we became interested in it. I thought law was such a logical discipline that I gave up the idea of doing economics somewhere along the way. But actually, I ended up, after my in the economics faculty, University of Malaya, before I went over to London to do my legal studies. Actually, I enjoy economics too. But it's just that there are too many assumptions in economics, as you know, unlike law, which is very logical and you are supposed to give concrete answers to concrete problems. No citrus paribus, whatever. It's all logical and clear, and you get answers at the end of the day. So that attracted me to the law.
I see. Tan Sri, can we know where did you read law prior to becoming a lawyer?
Well, I got my scholarship to do law, this judicial service scholarship, quite late. So there wasn't enough time for me to apply to a proper university, let alone a top-notch university. So I started law being a student at this little-known place called the College of Law. I think it still exists today, or Gibson and Weldon's, somewhere along Chancery Lane. So I spent a few months in Gibson and Weldon's before I secured a place at the London School of Economics, which is where I wanted to be, actually. So after that, I switched. I went over to LSE and thoroughly enjoyed myself there. Good environment, and demonstrations every other semester, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was a good place to be, yeah.
Yeah. Is this demonstration, this practice, this culture is sort of like the norm, because we have our peers studying in the UK. They say, oh, they experience demonstrations, almost every other day. So is it some part of their culture in the Western part of the world?
I wouldn't say it's an ingrained part of their culture, but it is something that happens when they feel so passionate about certain issues, and they just make their feelings felt. They vent their feelings through demonstrations. Most times they are very well ordered and peaceful. But those days, sometimes things got out of hand. You remember, this was the Vietnam War era, so feelings ran high over the war, and South Africa, the apartheid in South Africa, there were demonstrations around that too, and the Irish problem. So it was quite an interesting time. You got lots of global issues surfacing in the UK. So yeah, demonstration is part and parcel of democratic life, I think. So should be allowed, I think, with constraints, no doubt.
Tan Sri, when you were in law school, was the journey challenging for you? Was it tough, being in law school?
No. I enjoyed myself and in law school, as I said just now. New experience. At that age, it was very easy to absorb a lot of knowledge. You know? It's only later on in life that brain fogging sets in. You know, your hard disk, your software, you know, needs some radical change, and or if the computer gets very tired at the end of the day, you know. But when you're young, you're full of ideas. You know, you absorb ideas, and of course, there must be a proper environment. And LSC, I'm glad to say, provided me that environment. So we were studying not just law, you know, but all sorts of disciplines. It was a thinking place. You could interact with not only, obviously, Malaysians. We had lots of East Malaysians those days. You know, in my class, there were 6 of us from Malaysia, yeah? And 5 from Sabah and Sarawak. So you know, we had quite a presence. You know how small classes are in UK, but there were many Malaysians there. Yeah? So we would interact, and lunchtime was always full of interactions, discussions, and yeah? It was good. Yeah, we had Africans and East Europeans, and of course British and Irish, and you know, so communists and socialists and conservatives. It was an interesting place. Interesting place. So I was glad I was in London during this era, you know, and I learned a lot. It was a formative period of my life. Yeah, yeah.
Were there any subjects that you fancied throughout law school, or maybe Tan Sri, you just love all subjects that were taught in school?
Well, you know how it was those days. I think now it's a bit different. There are lots more subjects to do. I enjoyed all the subjects that I took. Of course, as far as the electives were concerned, I was a bit adventurous. I took electives, which, you know, one thought was quite silly to do, you know. But today, I don't regret it, you know. Of course, I did my master's, but during my undergraduate days, I took, of course, company law. I've always been interested in commercial law. So I took company law, again, fortunate to be lectured by Professor Wedderburn, you know, one of the experts in company law then. I took international law and all sorts of things. I did not usual evidence and real and personal property and so on and so forth. And then when I did my master's, I got a bit more adventurous. At a time when the law of the sea was a very new subject, you didn't have the convention yet. Yeah? I took the law of the sea. Yeah? There were not enough books written as yet. I remember there was one book written by Mr. Colombo, like Columbus, the law of the sea. It was very interesting. And it occupied in the normal textbooks just a small chapter on the law of the sea. But today, of course, it's entirely different. Yeah? And then I did industrial and intellectual property. Those days it was known as industrial and intellectual property. Yeah? Now, of course, IP. Yeah? And many couldn't understand, what is this property? Intellectual property, there's property in intellect, you know. They could understand industrial property, but intellectual property took a bit of convincing. Again, there were no books written for students. So we had to use practitioners' texts. And again, I was fortunate to have a good teacher, Professor Cornish, who was the leading expert in industrial and intellectual property then. And his book is still widely read. He passed away a few years back, I think. He was a very good teacher. You know, there were no books, so literally the materials had to be photostated those days, or cyclostyle, and we were relying on that. Yeah? So it was a very useful course, so that later when I entered practice, quite a large part of my practice had to deal with copyright. Of course, trademarks was very boring, you know, but certainly copyright and trademark infringement, I must say, and patents, the knowledge that I had came in handy. And in fact, I introduced the IP course in the University of Malaya because I felt it was so important. So there's so many lawyers nowadays who specialize in IP.
Yeah.
Those days there were not many. Yeah. So that's what I enjoyed, of course, staple or constitutional law, international law, administrative law, but I was equally interested in evidence, you know. So I'm a jack of all trades in a way. Even when in the University of Malaya, when I was senior to IP, to constitutional law, evidence, and it was a mixed bag of many things.
Tan Sri, correct me if I'm wrong, but after completing a law school, you spent a few years in London. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I did my master's, no doubt. Then I went home. So the master's and by law and the first degree, I was there for 5 years to complete the entire course. I went back again, to do my postgraduate back to LSE again, but I never completed it. I told my supervisor, Professor Jack Griffith, that I'll come back to Malaysia, I'll finish it. I nearly completed the thesis. I got back in Malaysia, I got bored. I started working again, and there you are.
So Tan Sri, as you mentioned just now, you was actually a lecturer in UM. Can you tell us as to why you decided to teach law instead of practicing it at that point of your life?
There's an interesting twist in my life.
Right.
Wow.
I was a government scholar, judicial and legal scholar. And all of my friends who went with me and those who went after me as well, joined the legal service, the judicial legal service. Many became magistrates, and from there on, they progressed, and some became judges, and of course, ascended to the highest judiciary. But there was a difference in my case. The rest didn't have a master's. I had a master's, you know. And the University of Malaya had just been formed. The law faculty, of the University of Malaya had just been formed. So they were looking for teachers, right? And then when they came to know that I was doing my master's at LSE, they were interested in having me back as a law lecturer. So actually, I don't know who started the ball rolling, but eventually I was, called by Tun Saleh Abbas to meet him. So I went to see him. So in fact, he was the one who told me, "You go and join the law faculty, better for you, since you have a master's." So that's how I ended up in the law faculty instead of being a magistrate, somewhere in Kuala Terengganu or Sungai Petani or wherever. So that changed my life. But of course, later on, I joined the judiciary. So it's one full circle. Yeah, that's the story. Didn't set out to join, but there you are. Certain things in life have a twist. Yeah.
Can I ask, Tan Sri, what sort of subjects or modules do you taught when you were as lecturer?
Yeah, I taught evidence, which I enjoy even now. Civil procedure. The first subject I was made to teach was civil procedure. So
Wow.
which frankly I didn't enjoy very much, but it's important. Until today is important. You can't really practice until you know civil procedure. Civil procedure, evidence, constitutional law, administrative law, a bit of international law. I even did local government law at one of the universities, not University of Malaya, but one of the local universities wanted to introduce local government law. So I was invited to also teach local government law. And industrial intellectual property, I've already mentioned, I taught that as well. Yeah.
What was your, because you had an illustrious career, you were a judge, you were a lawyer, but as well as you were a lecturer. So could you tell us, is there anything that you enjoyed being a lecturer?
That I enjoy?
Yes.
Well, as when you don't set out to do the job as a lecturer, it just came. And yes, I did enjoy my stay in the University of Malaya teaching law. For a young lawyer, it was challenging. Those days we didn't even have sufficient number of law lecturers. So we had to start from scratch most times. But it was challenging to teach Malaysian law. We were all tutored in English law, but we work hard, to at least prepare our materials on Malaysian law. So it was interesting. And those days we had very high quality students entering the law faculty, the creme de la creme. So it was good. A lot of interaction between law students and the lecturers. And of course, there was a transition from English to Bahasa Malaysia, right? You wanted to also be conversant in Bahasa Malaysia. Students had to be conversant in both Bahasa Malaysia and English, right? And the lecturers too were expected to teach in Bahasa Malaysia and English equally proficiently. So we used to do that. And again, it was another interesting period of my life. I was actually a member of the Dewan Bahasa Istilah Committee even, so we were coining the terms which are still currently being used. Not all of them though, but many are still currently being used. So it was good. It was good. And those days, we were teaching not only in the University of Malaya. I had to go sometimes even to Kota Baru, to Nilampuri, now the Islamic Academy of the University of Malaya now, because people were interested in constitutional law. So I used to teach the students in Nilampuri constitutional law. They were good students, very good students, from not only Malaysia, but from Thailand. They had a really multinational component as well.
Wow.
Interesting. In ITM, and I used to teach in ITM too.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
ITM was guest lecturer, and of course, aside from the faculty of law, we had to teach the economics faculty students too, and arts faculty students too. Everyone wanted to learn about administrative law and constitutional law, And I used to have classes. The largest class I had ever was about 400 students.
Wow.
Wanting to learn about constitutional law.
That's actually quite inspiring to even know that during your time that a lot of people wanted to learn about constitutional law, Tan Sri.
Yeah.
So now from your life as a lecturer, now going on to as a sort of your life in the legal profession, could you tell us about, firstly about your pupillage and who is your pupil master and how was your pupillage like during those days?
I did my pupillage twice,
Oh, okay. Tell us
I
about
was in
that.
the University of Malaya, because it was expected for some of us to do our pupillage. I don't want to do it. I did it just for the fun of it, actually. But never got myself called to the board first round. I decided I might as well enter practice. So I did my chambering again, under the then partner in Chang and Ariff those days, or Joseph Tan and Tang, the precursor of Chang and Ariff, Robert Chong, Robert Chong. So yeah, it was quite fun.
Could you tell us about the sort of type of cases like you did during your pupillage? Was it mainly civil litigation, or was it a type of variety of cases that you did?
Joseph Tan and Tang, those days, now of course Chang and Ariff, now CCA, the merger, was a commercial law firm and a corporate law firm as well. We had our fair share of corporate work and a litigation revolving around corporate matters. So I started my practice as a corporate law person, but of course with the background in IP, time at all, I was doing a lot of injunctions revolving around IP work, and constitutional law, of course, things came my way to do all those unpopular cases. So I did the full works, banking, company law matters, all types of commercial law issues, IP, and the rest. Yeah, really, we didn't specialize so much. I think we came by within our expertise. We would do it. Even did conveyancing, of course. Everyone has to do conveyancing. Yeah, corporate loans and S&Ps and transfers and something. Yeah.
Tan Sri, do you still remember the first case you took on as a lawyer?
First case, I can't
Yeah.
remember. It must have been a commercial case.
Right.
But I remember the first constitutional law case or administrative constitutional case that I took up. I was asked to assist in that case by Tan Sri Shafi. Was doing this case, so he said, well, you come and assist me, which I did as his co-counsel. That came to be one of the leading cases in administrative law. That was an interesting case. Yeah.
Okay. So as many of our listeners will know, now your law firm is known as Choi & Company plus Chung and Ariff. But back then, what made you want to start up your own firm? Who inspired you, and what was the thinking process?
We all started in Yusof Tan and Tang,
Okay.
And then one fine day, Yusof Tan was now passed on as well, decided to migrate to Australia. So we just took over the firm. There was a branch in Ipoh that went its own way. And in Kuala Lumpur, we decided to change that firm into a firm which deals more with litigation, because my senior partners were not litigation people, except for Lo Siu Chang and myself, who were heavily involved in litigation. So it became very much litigation-centered. The staple of corporate work was still there, corporate loans and so on, but it changed when we took over. We were quite heavily involved in litigation those days.
Was it tough, sort of having to take over from the old reins, or you find it like easier because you had, friends who were with you at the firm?
Well, it's always tough, when you take over from people who were more established than you were those days. But we managed to make a name for ourselves by sheer hard work. And finally, it became quite a good firm till today.
Tan Sri, if I may ask, why did you take leave to join the Securities Commission? Can you tell us about the role of the organization and your experience with them?
All right. Again, this is nothing that I planned. The powers that be then decided it was about time Malaysia had its own Securities Commission. And one of my close friends, Tan Sri Munir, was chosen to head the Securities Commission. So he invited me over. He knew we were together in LSE. He was my senior 1 year, and also in college, in Royal Military College. I suppose he thought I could do a decent job. So I took on the job as Director of Market Supervision. And until today, I keep telling people, this was the most interesting job that I've had. Not legal practice, not being on the bench, but being Director of Market Supervision. It was a very, very interesting and challenging job. Literally, I had to start from scratch. It was a kind of public service on my part. It was an honor to have been invited to establish Market Supervision Department from scratch. I was the first Market Supervision Director, and I only had one manager under me when I started. After that, we expanded. And it's now one of the main pillars in the Securities Commission of Malaysia. It's interesting. But I could do the job because I had litigation experience, and I did a lot of corporate work. which included securities-related issues. I was also advising at some point matters relating to the LSE, KLSE, Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange. So that sort of propelled me to do the job better as Director of Market Supervision, to make sure that the markets were orderly and transparent, no hanky-panky, and no market manipulation. And I used to travel all over, to Hong Kong and Australia and of course Singapore, to make sure that our markets were not infiltrated, by our market manipulators. Yeah. It's interesting. Gave me a valuable insight into the investigative process. Yeah. So this until today, it actually helped me in my legal practice, to the extent that when you have your client or witnesses telling you these are the facts, it is best not to believe 100% of what they say. Right? Through the investigative experience, I know that there will be twists and turns and the frailty in memory, and sometimes we end up with a completely different version. So that can only come about through experience of the investigative process and how to handle evidence, and eventually evidence as presented as facts. That's how it was.
I'm pretty sure during your time in the Securities Commission, it was a busy period for you, and you had a lot on your plate, because if I'm not mistaken, that was during when Malaysia's economy was actually booming. And so was it actually tough for you?
Yeah, it was tough. It was a very tough job, because it had economic repercussions. Right? When you are a lawyer dealing for a client, you've only got to worry about that client's interest, really. Yeah? And of course, interest of justice, or whatever. But when you're in the Securities Commission, supervising the market, overseeing the market, economic interests of the nation are at stake. Yeah. So I had to do a lot of work to fully understand the economic the implications of what we were doing. And we were developing. We are not merely developing as an equities market. We were developing as well as a futures market, So we had to do the work and learn as we ran. So I remember one of those things that we had to handle and wipe out those days was this Hang Seng Index thing. A lot of people were cheated. And I'm glad to say my team and I broke that, So we saw the nonsense of what was happening. People were manufacturing invoices, really, or trade bills. And a lot of people were duped. So we used to raid places, caught hold of them, and they were also dealing, manipulating through our layered process. Sometimes they do it in Hong Kong, place an order for Malaysian stocks through Singapore. So they layer it. It was very difficult to get hold of the actual culprit sometimes. At the end of the day, ultimately, you may end up with a BVI company. But we managed to do it. And there was one other episode, the Union Paper episode, that stock went sky high, and then it fell through short selling. So we had to investigate. And then with luck, we managed to get the culprit. Yeah. So the market was on a high. We were doing tremendous volumes. So that bit of it, we were worried. Talking of soft landing. How do we engineer soft landing? Because it was on rail. Gordon Brown, the British Prime Minister, came to Kuala Lumpur and he wanted a briefing. I mean, most people couldn't understand. How come we were doing such high volumes, even compared to the city? The English stock exchange, we're not doing that high of volume compared to ours. But of course, you see, there were a lot of slush funds coming in from overseas. And then we investigated and we became wiser. So don't be too happy when your stock market rises very high. Sometimes because the American mutual funds will enter your market fast, and they can leave our market, your market, as easily as they came. So that's why you have the yo-yo effect. The market has to be stable, and it was part of the job of market supervision to ensure transparency and stability in the market. Yeah? So also it was very challenging. Yeah. It was like being a policeman, doing a lawyer's job. Yeah.
Well, you said, you mentioned about being a policeman, but I think now from a securities commission to now to a lawyer, I think more people would be more interested now in your sort of your story and on the bench. But your story on the bench, actually, I read this was quite interesting. Could you tell us, Tan Sri, whether it's true that actually in becoming a judicial commissioner, that you were actually in sort of the realm of politics? Is that true? Could you let us in on to that?
Yeah. I was in politics because you cannot escape the influence of politics. And being a teacher of constitutional law, you could see the kind of a relationship between the two, law and politics. So I had a few overtures even before I finally decided. But I was not interested in being on the bench. Had I been that interested on being on the bench, I would have done so in the 1970s and became a magistrate. But I was happy practicing the law until Tun Hamid called me in the midst of my doing election petitions all over the country. He said, would you be interested? And I had, refused an earlier overture, made me feel a bit guilty. So when Hamid asked me, I said, all right. So I will do another stint of public service. So I said, okay, I will consider and I accept. And that's how I became a judicial commissioner.
Was it sort of a challenge from having to switch from lawyer to politics now to actually being on the bench? Was it a challenge for you? No,
it's never. You see, when you train in the law, even though you are in politics in one way or another, when you practice law, you have to be independent and impartial. So it wasn't that difficult, and of course, they didn't post me to do criminal law and Kalostor or Ipoh. They positioned me in the Appellate and Special Powers Division in Kuala Lumpur, which had a tremendous backlog. So it was hard work, but I think I managed to reduce the backlog tremendously. Why? Because I had exposure in administrative and constitutional law, judicial review and all that. I was doing lots of it. So it wasn't that difficult. Once you have with teaching experience and the practical experience of being a lawyer, dealing with all these matters, so being a judge was quite easy in terms of the subject matter. The hard part was the backlog. And having to decide fast and having to write your judgments or grounds of decisions fast. That was quite a burden. Yeah.
You said actually it was easy. Did being in legal practice sort of help you settle in the job?
Yeah, you're just doing it. You're seeing the reverse side. You would have your experience in civil procedure. They couldn't run circles around you because you know procedure. So you don't need to relearn procedure because you have been doing it so many times over. And of course, judicial review, so easy for me actually. The principles are all set. It's just applying the principles to the metrics of the case. The difficulty, of course, is the evaluation. As a lawyer, you have one client for his costs. You don't need to worry about other things. You worry whether you can win or you can't win. But that is your focus. But as a judge, your focus is not one. You have to evaluate. There's a case for the applicant, there's a case for the respondent, the plaintiff or defendant, and sometimes you get multiple defendants. So that it's not so easy to balance the metrics to achieve a just outcome. Quite difficult.
In the midst of on the bench, Tan Sri, was there any sort of case that stood out to you when you were being in the bench?
Yeah, I thought there were so many controversial cases that I heard, including the Perak case, in which I recused myself. I didn't decide that case. I recused myself, but it landed on my lap. Until today, some people believe that I was the one who delivered the judgment. No, I didn't. I recused myself. But I wrote a very long judgment on that. So the principles of recusal are there too. Some people are still using the grounds of judgment that I wrote. Of course, this what they call the book banning cases. There were a few that I decided, from Sisters in Islam, to the cartoons case, which I enjoyed tremendously. I thought it was a bit of nonsense, banning a book of cartoons on the ground of public order. And Azuna was very happy that he got the judgment in his favor. To the Teo Beng Hawk's matter, but that was when I was on the Court of Appeal. So I decided, together with Ma Wing Kwai and Hamid Sultan. And the other thing which I count myself fortunate to have been on the bench to hear and decided was the Nick Nazmi case, the Peaceful Assembly Act matter. That was also controversial. Not many people agreed with our decision, but we thought what we did was right. So, and there were many others. Sometimes people think I'm a constitutional law man, but I did a lot of commercial law cases too. Can't remember those names, but there were quite a few commercial law matters that I did.
Yes. But from all these cases that you mentioned, Tan Sri, do you find it any cases to be the best of your judgment, or rather the best known of your judgment to this day? If you could handpick one or two.
The best, the one that I enjoyed most, I think it's Sisters in Islam case.
Right.
Which has stood the test of time.
Tan Sri, as an experienced Court of Appeal judge, you've definitely met or have to sit in many hearings, listening to lawyers, experienced lawyers, giving their best arguments. So any advice on how to prepare or argue your case effectively, especially at the appellate courts?
Know your facts well, know your evidence well, and I know your law, of course, well. And when you submit, be clear, be concise. Cases don't win an appeal. You can have 6 or 7 volumes of cases. They're not going to win your appeal. It's the art of persuasion. Not only at the Court of Appeal, even at the level of the High Court. It's the art of persuasion. It's an art, so you have to accumulate the experience to do it properly. But if you're good, succinct, and clear, and you have the case. It is said sometimes that if you're good, you can wrap up the case in 10 minutes before the judges. They understand you, they appreciate what you're doing. But if you just spend a day trying to convince the judges through long-winded arguments, you might not win the case. You'll be an impressive collector of references of legal cases and all that. But your art of persuasion is not that good. Yeah. Compared to someone who can stand up and say the issues in this case are very clear, my lords. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And in the interest of justice, that my appeal should be allowed, or the appeal of the appellant should be dismissed. And then then you lay out your arguments succinctly. Yeah? You may win with citing only just a few cases. The trouble with law students and young lawyers is they think the more cases you cite, the better. Yeah, but it becomes repetitive. So it's always, good strategy. You get the latest case, and in the latest case or cases, you'll find all the other cases discussed. So why do you want to spend 10 pages when you can do a page or 2 pages? Yeah, you got to be smart, and of course rehearse. If you have a case that is important to your client and to yourself and to your team, you rehearse. I used to do it. Even at the high court level, you have to rehearse your questions. You have to anticipate the answers. Now, if the answer is A, what do you do? If the answer is B, what is your follow-up question? Things like that will have to be rehearsed. And even your submissions, you have to rehearse. No one is going to like you when you stand up and you read from a written text, in a monotone. You got to impress on the bench, and the way to do it is you rehearse beforehand. So that becomes second nature. You can even cast aside your written submissions, yeah, and more or less talk extemporary. But of course, you would have prepared your submissions well before time. You have your written submissions anyway, yeah. But because you have rehearsed it, either alone or with your team, it gets that much easier. So, but of course, it involves very hard work, yeah. But there are no shortcuts. So being a lawyer is tough, huh? But you can be wise, yeah, to the profession, yeah. And of course, nowadays you can use technology. So why would you want to spend more time working on cases when you can use technology and reduce the time? I use all kinds of technology, at my disposal, including voice recognition. Sometimes when you're tired of writing or reading, you dictate. You can talk to the computer if you want. People think you're crazy or whatever, but there's a merit there. When you dictate, when you rehearse, and the computer types it for you, you don't need to worry so much about whether your typing is good or not. It clicks, and so on and so forth. Yeah? And once you have a case wrapped up, the references are there to archive. So when you have another case like it, don't start from ground zero. Get your archive materials out, and you work on that basis. It's much easier today than previously. You have your library in your briefcase anyway. The entire library is just a click away. And it's easy. Yeah.
Now, Tan Sri, you gave us a lot of exciting points similar to your life. You are currently living in an exciting point of your life. You've from a lecturer to a legal practitioner to serving in the Securities Commission, and then serving in the Judiciary, and then subsequently you move on to serving in the legislative. For the benefit of our audiences, after the Pakatan Harapan government took over or won the general election, Tan Sri, you were appointed, and then subsequently you took office as a Speaker of Dewan Rakyat in July 2018. But Tan Sri, can you actually, tell us how did the position of being Speaker of Parliament, came to you?
I never applied for the job. I mean, I've written it in the book. If you read that book that I wrote, Parliament Uninspected, it was like the earlier time when I was invited to join the Securities Commission. So I suppose they headhunted me in a way. So I was invited to consider whether I would like to be elected by the House as the Speaker of the Dewan Rakyat. So it's not something that I lobbied for. I was not desperate for the job. Don't tell the whole world that I wanted the job and I'm the best person for the job and all that. No. In fact, if you read the book, I was a bit reluctant initially. I was a bit reluctant. But again, friends. Yeah, it's good to have friends sometimes, but sometimes they create problems for you too. So friends, friends persuaded me. They were working, on the reforms and the Institutional Reform Committee or something they had set up those days. So they said, take on the job, please. And we need to clean up Parliament and then do reforms there. So I said, all right. After some hesitation, I said, okay, I'll land my service again. Yeah, form of public service. But I got booted out, as you know. Yeah. Very interesting. But because you don't ask for it, you don't fight for it. So being booted out or being removed, it's not so much an unfortunate episode in my life. It's just one of those things. But if had I wanted a job, it would have been traumatic. But it wasn't traumatic. It happens, no problem. I go back to practice, where I'm back in practice, in my small way, as a consultant. Yeah.
Tan Sri, for perhaps our listeners who might not be so familiar with the separation of powers of Parliament, could you perhaps be kind enough to tell us what is the role of Speaker of Parliament, especially to those who might not be unaware?
Yeah. The Speaker is an important function, Don't believe what you're seeing through the YouTube or whatever. But he's there to perform a very important function. Yeah? The House has to be kept orderly, and time must be given to both sides to debate, to ask questions, so that the House, Parliament, can perform as the inquiry of the nation of sorts, as control over the executive to avoid executive excesses. Okay? That's a function of Parliament, to ensure that there's no abuse of power through transparency, through questioning, through debates, through voting. Yeah. And the Speaker must allow this function to be performed, because the Speaker is not supposed to be a Speaker for the government. That's a wrong idea. Speaker is elected by the entire House. He is the Speaker of the House. So to that extent, he has to be independent and fair to all the MPs in the House. Right? So it is an important office in an important institution, which is why reforms have to be done. I tried my best to do some of it. Yeah. And it's ongoing. Even today, you have reforms. Right? That's the system. Ultimate decisions will be by Parliament. The collective wisdom of our MPs who represent you all, represent you and I.
Tan Sri, when we talk about separation of powers, and in this particular area, the legislative, on paper, it is true that we have the separation of power, but sometimes for some people, the House, the Parliament may not seem to be very separative in nature, because at the end of the day, it is the Prime Minister who, correct me if I'm wrong, Tan Sri, it is the Prime Minister who appoints the Speaker, and then usually in the House, it's controlled by the executive. Would you agree to that, Tan Sri?
You see, politics and to that extent constitutional law is based on a delicate balance, right? I don't think there is any country in the world where there is a rigid separation of powers. Okay, there will be overlaps. In life, there are overlaps. In political life, too, there are overlaps. So you have to balance the underlying principles against the existing system that you have chosen as your blueprint for good governance. That's what it's about, you know. Good governance and prevention of abuse of power, right? And they can vary over time. Sometimes when the executive is all powerful, right, it may look as if parliament is a government department, but the equation can change as it is today, for instance. When the executive is not that strong, then parliament can be a very powerful institution to keep this balance, you know, moving, to stabilize the system, right? Which is why today, because of the memorandum of understanding on political stability and transformation, they have managed to get some good results, if I may say so. The anti-hopping bill, for instance, has just been passed. It will be receiving the royal assent, so we have been told, soon. Yeah? So that is a good sign, you know, of a proper functioning parliament. All right. So we were talking about check and balances. This is a good example. It is not because executive wants it. No, it is because there is a clamor for it within the House, reflecting the clamor for it in the country, that you have this desirable outcome. Yeah, and they appointed a committee to look at it and listen to the views of opposition as well as government and independent MPs and so on and so forth. And we have a good law, I think. We'll see how it works out in practice. So the committee system is another good one, which is now becoming a lot more active after a lull. So now we have a committee system which is doing very good work. You see, the Public Accounts Committee, the PAC, for instance, has been studying this latest combat ships matter. That is a proper function of Parliament. Without Parliament, you can have a study, you know, civil society can do a study, but it doesn't have the full force. Yeah, but when Parliament speaks, then by right, the nation should stand up and listen. But they can only exist when the system has that balance. But when the system does not have the balance, when the executive can say, we don't care about Parliament, all right? We won't even attend Parliament if we feel we don't need to, or appear before the committee if we don't want to, then the system gets a little bit out of gear. Yeah. So it's up to the citizens and their representatives to maintain this delicate balance. Yeah? And this is where political culture, good parliamentary culture comes into play. You know, so it will take time, but already we are seeing improvements, right? Despite the shouting and you know, all this nonsense happening. But we can change over time. I think we can do so, especially when we're young people like you all are interested in political matters. The political parties now centered around the youthful element. It's up to the younger generation to effect these changes. We need creative people with creative ideas, people who understand the system and not destroy it. You know, so far we're seeing all kinds of nonsense happening in Parliament, which shouldn't happen. There has to be a stop to it. And I hope, you know, really, I mean, I keep telling this to a lot of my friends, especially among the young people. If we can have 20 young MPs after GE15 for a start, you will see changes. Yeah, the more the better. But let's start at 20. Young meaning, you know, 18 to maybe 30 or 40 at the most. Yeah, you get 25. Yeah, young MPs. You see a lot of changes and a lot more ladies. Yeah, lady MPs, women MPs, female MPs, whatever is the correct term. They are very sensitive when I use the wrong term. Maybe, so we have more female MPs. You will also see changes. Yeah, and they are not the ones who create all those problems on the floor of the House. Yeah? No lady MP has sworn an expletive, so far as I can remember.
Yes.
So we should have them, and a lot more young MPs. It's happening around the world. I don't think Malaysia is going to be the exception to worldwide trend. Yeah. So we have to look up to better days.
Yeah. Tan Sri, was it tough for you in the beginning? You know, considering that politics back then, the political scenario back then was a little bit, you know, facing a turbulence, if I may. Can it be quite tough, you know, seeing it, or actually sitting on that bench, controlling and, you know, becoming the speaker at that point in time?
Well, it was tough in a way, but not as tough as being a judge. The speaker has to be a master of control. It's like an umpire. He doesn't participate in the debates, nothing. So that the tough part is really to control the misbehavior. Yeah. The procedure is very simple. It is not something that you need to crack your head for days on end. It's all set through the standing orders. Yeah? But if we can improve parliamentary culture, the job will become quite pleasant. Yeah, and that we must strive to achieve.
You spoke about having a good parliamentary culture. What sort of parliamentary reforms that you wanted to enact to ensure that we have a better parliamentary system, and were you successful in enacting those changes that you wanted to see in the Dewan Rakyat?
Well, there's a soft part. There's the stick, carrot and stick. Yeah? The soft part is to have a good committee structure. A lot of the work will be done through committees, and you cannot shout and swear within committees. So it's like being in a meeting. Okay? So if you have a lot more work done in committees, people will learn what is supposed to be good parliamentary culture. You're seeing it. Yeah? They can be bipartisan or non-partisan. And one other thing which I introduced, and I'm glad they have pursued it even now, is the concept of all-party parliamentary groups. MPs get together from across party lines to tackle specific issues. That's good. They've come up with a report on political funding. They came up with a draft on a political funding bill. Cross-party approach. That is good. Yeah? So hopefully all this will translate upwards at the level of the Dewan, the hall. Then you can have wise people debating wisely, without getting too emotional. But Malaysia is Malaysia. I mean, we have our shortcomings because we are a multinational, multiracial country. So certain shortcomings, we cannot shy away from the fact that sometimes race-based narrative is still very much bandied about to gain electoral support. But it is not a must that we continue to destroy ourselves. So things have to change. That's why I think the young will have to lead the charge. Change. You cannot be thinking in terms of an outdated political model. It could be acceptable in the 70s and 60s or 50s, whatever. But this is 2020, So we have to change. All racial groups will have to accommodate, and come to some consensus, a new consensus maybe. And if we don't do that, then of course the future looks bleak. But it shouldn't be bleak, because the racial composition in Malaysia must be seen as an asset. There is strength in that. So why do we want to shoot ourselves in the foot? And Malaysia truly Asia. That each particular group has got the strengths and the weaknesses too. It is wrong to speak of one particular group A against group B, and we're all in it together. Yeah? But we must acknowledge our weaknesses too, not merely our strength. Intra-group and cross-groups and whatever. Yeah? And I think the country will progress better. There is always an economic aspect to politics. But often the politicians forget this. So whatever they say or do or plan politically will have economic repercussions. It is as plain as daylight. Maybe because it's as plain as daylight, they forget about it. You know, but you must think through all these issues. We need statesmen. We need people of caliber, you know, honest people. We need to stamp out corruption, the scourge of the nation. We mustn't listen to people who say corruption exists throughout the world, you know. So what? Right? It is wrong. We must stamp out corruption. We must stamp out, you know, racism, so that the country can prosper. Blessed as we are with a lot of natural resources, we can do much better, really. But for that, we need strong institutions. This is where your question comes out towards the beginning, parliament, institutions. We need to strengthen these institutions right through, including, you know, the political party system. That will have to be changed as well. We're seeing some good signs from the courts as we speak. That's good. Yeah. And it gives people a lot of confidence in the courts as an institution, the judiciary as an institution. It's very important. So you have parliament, you have the judiciary, you have the executive. If they all three function appropriately with the balancing, the country will propel itself forward. Yeah.
Just perhaps like a little sort of a side question, especially for our listeners who may want to ask this. You mentioned about having doing better. How would you rate your successor as Speaker of Parliament? Do you think he's doing an okay job, or he could do better?
He can do better, actually. Can do better. And although I don't want to be, you know, overly critical, yeah, it's all in the book. I have mentioned in a few episodes. One must understand what the functions are. There are a lot of patience to control the crowd. It's crowd control. You know, in crowd control, if you shout at the crowd will shout back. So but anyway, we don't talk of one person or two persons or three persons.
Yes.
Talking about the institution, yeah, the functions of the institution, of the high office, and they all should know what's expected of them. Yeah?
Tan Sri, just curious to know. You said Parliament is an institution that needs to be, you know, be strengthened and what have you. Do you see Parliament in the near future? Because as we all are aware, the speakers, including the deputy speakers, are pro-government. Do you see in the near future that there will be a deputy speaker from the opposition?
Yeah. It's not something that is in reinventing the wheel. No, it happens in most jurisdictions. In fact, this is one of the things that is being discussed, you know, but somewhat in the back burner now. There's no harm. You can have one from the opposition bench. So that you maintain this balance again. Nothing wrong. You can also work on the basis of having opposition time. Again, nothing very unusual. Other countries have it. So that the opposition will have their time in Parliament too. Can amend standing orders to accommodate this. Actually, you know, in Selangor they have it, some kind of opposition time. There's nothing very new. They don't call it opposition time. They call it what they call leader of the opposition slot of time. Yeah? So at least there's something for the opposition, and then you don't get overridden by the executive, the government. So given goodwill and statesmanship, and an understanding of the proper function of Parliament and the allied institutions, then things will be better. Life will be better. The economy will be better. And we focus on developing the nation and improving the livelihood of our citizens. Ultimately, this is what it's all about, isn't it? Providing good education, security, food on the table, happiness. How do we do it? Can't escape politics. Policies will have to be made. How are policies made? Through the political process. That is why even the young guys who seem to be put off by politics cannot adopt the position that because it's so off-puttish, we are not going to be part of the political process, we won't even vote. No, that is self-defeating. You have to be part of the political process. You must vote. You must come out to vote. Because if you don't come out to vote and vote in the right persons, you may end up, much to your regret, maintaining these corrupt politicians over and over again. Even if they're not corrupt, they may be unfit for the job. We can't be, at this day and age, be tolerating politicians who are not up to scratch. We need people of caliber. You can't have people of who are not of caliber to be your ministers, surely, would you? You wouldn't want that. And how do you ensure that this is done? You come out and vote for the right candidates. Doesn't matter which party it's from. I think that's a secondary consideration. But you must vote for the right candidate. Yeah? And then the system becomes more mature. Yeah? So you don't have the jumping from party to party again. Now that we have the anti-hopping bill, you don't have corruption, millions or tens of millions of ringgit passing hands to entice people to change parties and so on and so forth. We hear. So the system has to be clean, efficient, and patriotic. We don't talk about patriotism, do we? But it is a key component. So you need all this. And lawyers are important in this process. You all will be members of the profession. And it is part of our charter to uphold the cause of justice. Not to make money only, but uphold the cause of justice. So if there is a need to walk for justice, we should be walking for justice for principles. It has to be done. So many issues which needs to be tidied up. So we have to sit down and see what can be done in a proper democratic fashion. Malaysia is not known for dramatic kind of upheavals. No, we achieve through democratic means.
Actually, of course, your time as speaker did not last the full term due to certain political scenarios, i.e. the Sheraton move. Tan Sri, maybe ask your experience or maybe your thoughts on the Sheraton move when it happened. What was the feeling that that was inside of you?
Well, I'm not much of an insider, although Tony Pua has done the painting called Sheraton Move with me right in the middle. I have no privity in terms of knowledge. It was all done by the politicians' side. I knew of it only very much later. I thought it was unfortunate. It shouldn't happen in a democratic setup. If you want to change the government, you got to go through the ballot box. But the combination of the pandemic and the political change was such that we couldn't have a general election so soon. No one wanted to have a general election. But all said, it shouldn't have happened. We should not have had this exodus of politicians from Pakatan Harapan across the floor to form a new coalition. It's not on. It is fundamentally wrong. In principle, it is wrong. Why should the losing side win and the winning side lose midstream? If you want to change, wait until 5 years, or wait until the time is ripe to have a general election. And then you have stability in the system. But that is now history. The anti-hopping legislation is now hopefully, or will be in place hopefully, and I hope for better times. Yeah? There must be stability in the system.
Definitely.
Of course, coalition politics opens itself to some sort of instability too. Yeah? But it's not something which we cannot, as a country, understand and tolerate. That's okay. But we have this mass movement across the floor, just like that, to bring down a government through backdoor means. That's an unfortunate train of events that we saw. I wrote extensively on it in 2 books. Of course, it is Parliament Unexpected, and there's also the larger book that I wrote. Is there a blow-by-blow account of what happened? Yeah.
Tansu, you mentioned about principles just now with regards to Langkah Sheraton, but some said it was legally right, but democratically wrong. Your thoughts, Tansu?
Yeah. In terms of the legality, all lawyers, of course, you can say that it's constitutional. Yeah. But in what sense? You have to drill down further and look at constitutional principles. Right? Should it be done this way? What sort of system are we encouraging? We must have a democratic system. If it is a democratic system, when you have such an upheaval like this, you go back to the polls. Let the people decide, right? So, or have a vote on the floor to see who commands the majority, right? Anyway, I think most of us have learned a valuable lesson from it.
Yeah? Definitely, yeah.
Look what happened after that. We have Sabah. That was bad. People hop from one place to another, and sometimes multiple times. These are old politics. We look forward to new politics.
Yes.
So better parliamentary culture and better responsibility, politics of statesmanship, and like I say, politics of patriotism, which is very important. Yeah.
Looking back, Tan Sri, was there being in the speaker's position, was there anything perhaps you would have wished to do differently? And given the chance again, would you perhaps want to be the speaker of Dewan Rakyat once more?
No, my time has come and passed. I don't want a job. Yeah, done things differently. I suppose I would. I could have been tougher. I wanted to, but because of the delicacy of the matter, the change of government and all that, so you can't be too tough on your MPs on both sides. Yeah? But I think now is the time that you have to be tough. So you need to change the standing orders. I wanted to do it actually. Change the standing orders and change the Act, Powers, House of Parliament Powers and Act, 1952, Powers and Privileges Act. We must have more teeth given to Parliament. The power to suspend and to impose hefty fines on MPs who misbehave, right? Through a simpler procedure. You have to do it because unless those who misbehave don't get elected again, but if they are re-elected, then something must be done to maintain order in the House and to regain the confidence of the Rakyat. I don't think those people have at the back of their minds this notion of, have I got the confidence of the Rakyat by doing all this nonsense? So those who indulge in such nonsense ought to be fined properly, suspended for a longer period of time. Those days, 2 days I would give. I think it's very lenient. I would encourage the Speaker's office to be even tougher nowadays, because it's got a little bit out of hand. Both sides, I'm not speaking of only the opposition or the government. Both can equally misbehave. So if someone misbehaves, maybe suspension of 6 months, as has been done in the past. Tan Sri Zahir, Tun Zahir, used to suspend MPs for a long period. But of course, he didn't fine them too. But I think it is good to change the law, in the process of doing it, to the extent that Parliament or its committees can fine recalcitrant MPs, or at least deny them, some of the allowances that they get. Eventually, if it hurts the purse, then they will behave properly. So there are many things that can be done. For instance, attendance of MPs. I think there must be a way of compelling them to attend every day for more days in a year. I don't think we can tolerate the system forever and ever. Right? You just sit for minimum number of days in a year, and they should be made to sit more regularly, get the job done. There are many things that will have to be passed by Parliament. So you have to sit every other day. The short breaks in between. Many things. So.
Okay, so now we're sort of going to the end part of our podcast strategy, where we have sort of general questions we'd like to ask all of our special guests. So it's just like a general question, so a bit of a Q&A session. G, would you like to start us off?
Yes, definitely. Country in this current age, especially in this technology era, how important is it for one, especially the younger generation, to be aware of current government or political awareness in this country?
Yeah, I think I've stated that earlier, haven't I? But everyone must be politically aware. I know it's very difficult sometimes, especially among the young. They don't think there's anything for them by being politically active. There's a kind of there's a fatigue of some sort against politics, and the sheer uselessness of politics, according to them. But politics is never useless. Politics is not always very dirty. It can be very dirty, but it's not politics that's dirty. It's people in politics. That's why I say you need statesmen. How do you get your statesmen? You got to inculcate your statesmen from a young age, right? Through education, through training, through all sorts of programs amongst the young. You must be politically aware. No question about it. There's no reason why you cannot be politically aware, because like you say, technology is available. Maybe you should fine-tune that technology to make people more receptive to politics. You have seen the transition from Facebook to YouTube, to TikTok. As we get more sophisticated, the attention span gets lesser and lesser. So back to the question you posed to me earlier, how do you persuade judges on the bench? Same thing. The art of persuasion. Use the least number of words with the maximum effect. That sort of thing. So technology can be very helpful. The style of politicking too must change with technology. If you ask me, there is no need today to have your massive ceramahs. It's out of date. So every time we have an election, we have hundreds of thousands of flags and waste money. Right? We should be more mature. In countries like Europe or even Turkey, they don't do this sort of thing. You don't spend millions of ringgit on flags for elections. You engage through television or radio. Then you go out to vote. Right? So you don't need to be accosted along the way, to the voting station. Old-fashioned politics. People think if they put up the highest flagpole, they will win elections. Or you put more flags up along the bridges in the constituency, you can win elections. That's old-style politics. So, or you have to visit every house to convince makcik and pakcik. Again, very old-style politics. You can persuade, perhaps more eloquently, more effectively through TikTok, for instance. or through cold calls, through telephone. Maybe, yeah. That's where technology again comes in handy. You have your big data all laid out. You will know exactly voting trends, and you target your campaign. So that's a wave of the future. I hope they're thinking about it. Yeah?
Okay, well, we thought we sort of cloud in on your other side project, Tan Sri. I don't think people could see, but it's, your book, Tan Sri, Parliament Expected, Recollections of Parliament Politics and Pandemic in Malaysia. Could you tell us, our listeners, what is this book really about, and why you decided to write about your journey as speaker?
I was either fortunate or unfortunately right in the center of the upheavals, yeah, in 2019, 2020, yeah. So that transition started off well, and then you have a lot of upheavals, mini upheavals along the way. So I felt that it had to be recorded, right? And then we have the pandemic too. So the book is subtitled "Recollections of Parliament, Politics, and the Pandemic." Yeah? So it was a potent mixture. I spent some time discussing it. It has to be recorded. So. But the book is not so much about me. You'll read through the book, you will not find an autobiography. No, it is a parliamentary story. It is something that I've written so that people understand what happened, right? And why certain things should not have happened. If you, after reading the book, you begin to understand better the functions of parliament, parliamentary proceedings, then I would have achieved my purpose. All right. To me, an important part of the book is in the closing chapter, yeah? In closing, where I have tied the strands together. And I've always discussed my personal views of the state of the nation. Yeah. And I did say the jury is still out there. So one has to look at current developments. If I bring out a second edition, I will revise it. And have some good words to say. It's not meant as a self-praise book. No, it's not that. It's already in second print, by the way. So, which means to say a lot of people are reading it, which is good. Thankful for it. Yeah.
Yes. For our audiences, you guys can get it. It's Parliament Unexpected by Tan Sri Ariff. It is sold at a very affordable price, and everyone should have it, I think, to my own opinion. Yeah. Tan Sri, before we end, one last question for you, Tan Sri. Any words of advice or encouragement for new upcoming lawyers or judges to be, or maybe Speaker of Parliament to be?
Oh, okay. I don't know what advice I can give further, except to work hard and be honest, love your country, be patriotic, polish up your skills. Yeah? Not only the technical skills, but also your soft skills. And be thankful in a way that you are in Malaysia, in a multicultural, multiracial society, which is unparalleled in the world. I don't think you find another country like this. Some countries are very near to it, Mauritius, whatever, but the mix is different. Yeah, but here you have a fantastic mix of cultures and histories, and people who have a part to play in the development of this country. And I think that sooner we lessen our talk of racial politics, so much the better. Yeah? And maybe in 20 years' time, maybe 30 years' time, we will see a different Malaysia. The Malaysia of today is already different compared to the Malaysia of 1957, when I entered school. It's very different. Yeah? So we can only progress further, and make sure as we progress further, we must not forget the past and our mistakes. We must learn from our mistakes and not repeat the unfortunate past. And the young has come up in full force. Engage, talk, through civil societies, through new political groupings. Make yourself heard, but not in compartmentalized kind of groups, but as Malaysians. Okay? Got to work hard at it. As Malaysians, Malays, Chinese, Gagasan, Muruts, East and West, we've got to get together, and talk as a nation, grounded on deep-seated patriotism. I'm sorry I have to repeat it because it's forgotten those times. Patriotism and the basic principles of the nation. That's all that I can say, actually. I mean, occasionally people ask me whether they should consider elevation to the bench or not. And I say, I told someone just last week, it's tough. It's a tough job, but it can be fulfilling too. So if you feel that you want to be part of the judiciary, work hard at it, polish up all your skills, and it's going to be a very hard job, but it can be satisfying too. Which job is not hard, as you tell me? Every job is difficult.
Yes, true.
Yes.
That is wise indeed, yes.
Well, that's it, I think, for all our listeners for the time we have with Tan Sri. Thank you for listening to the Alibi podcast. And we hope that you enjoyed this episode with the special series with former judges. And we hope to look forward to more talking to more relatable and relevant Sabahan law student topics. A massive thanks to our special guest, Tan Sri.
Thank you, Tan Sri.
For coming over.
No. Thank you for listening to an old man talking.
Wise, old man.
A very wise one, Tan Sri.
You're
very knowledgeable.
Yes.
Please do subscribe to us and stay relevant on all our latest content. Till then, and we'll see you in our latest episode. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Sorry now that I'm a little late. I apologize that you had to wait. It totally slipped my mind. I lost all my sense of time. So buy me that drink and just let me think, and I'll tell you the reasons why.